Hi, I'm John from Just Whiskey. If you like today's show, which I think you're gonna, give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And consider becoming a Patreon with the link in the description below. And thanks to the few Patreons that I do have that help support this channel. Much appreciated. And I also want to give a quick shout out to a fellow Whiskey Tube channel that hasn't reached the 1,000 subscriber threshold yet, but deservedly so, needs to surpass that, in my opinion. So please check out Whiskey on the West Coast. Okay, he offers fantastic content with great backstory to the distilleries or the bottle he's reviewing without sounding cookie cutter or textbook. He's salt of the earth, grassroots kind of a organic, thorough reviewer. So Whiskey on the West Coast. All right. Today we are going to be reviewing and talking about Single Cask Nation, Wolf Island, Take 2. But before we can talk about that, we need to acknowledge that there was a predecessor. And for sake of confusion, we're going to call the first release Take 1, even though it doesn't say Take 1 on here. And we're going to do a deep dive into the Water of Life film and these two bottles, but the review is going to be on the Take 2. So, in case you haven't heard yet, there's a film that was made a couple of years ago that came out during COVID that was mostly released on streaming, pay-per-view streaming kind of a thing, because all the movie theaters were closed down because of COVID. So what Single Cask Nation did, which they're an independent bottler, they collaborated with Greg Swartz, the director of Water of Life film, or The Water of Life. So Single Cask Nation took that Water of Life film and used that as an acronym to come up with Wolf Island Take 2. And so the Water of Life film is available on DVD as well as most streaming services. And what Greg did is when he made this film, he also had additional footage of Springbank and Glenfarclas. And the original movie was mostly focused on the Bruichladdich Distillery and the story behind that on Islay. So what he's done now is, so the DVD is just mostly the Water of Life Bruichladdich thing, but on streaming services he's added extended footage of his Springbank experience and the Glenfarclas experience. I don't know if eventually he'll release another DVD with the extended version or not, but and it was also released on PBS as well. Okay, so yeah, so the original DVD, I think you can buy it on Amazon for about $20. Okay, now we're going to get into the deep dive. Okay, so basically, both of these bottles are from sister casks from an unknown island distillery. And each one of these releases were 1,600 bottles made up of 6 casks and 6 casks. 5 of those casks of each one of these releases were non-peated, and one of the casks was lightly peated. So each one of these are 6 casks, all, to my knowledge, first fill ex-bourbon. So there's no sherry in here. So the mystery is, it's undisclosed, and I do not know what it is, nor have I been told, and nor can you find out. But by process of elimination, I've kind of come to my own conclusion, which if you stay to the end, I'll tell you what island, what distillery I think that these releases came from. All right. Now we're gonna do a little. We're gonna get into a bit of a deep dive before the review here, which I think you're gonna find interesting. So about a year ago, I watched a podcast with, at the time, was Single Cask Nation USA sales manager by the name of Elijah Amon, and he said that it's not from Orkney and it's not from Islay. Okay. And from my tasting experience, I've eliminated the Isle of Skye and Talisker. I do not think it's Talisker. Could be, but I don't think it is. So Elijah was at that time was talking about release number 1. Now, release number 1 was bottled for the Water of Life film in the summer of 2021. And both these bottles were distilled, matured, and bottled in Scotland. Each one of these, a total of 1,600 bottles, and each one of these 48.8% ABV, non-chill filtered, no coloring added. They list the cask numbers on here, which is really irrelevant unless you know what distillery they came from, but I am going to read them. So, release number 1, bottled in summer of 2021, consists of cask numbers 3, 10, 14, 20, 30, and 31. And what Elijah said about release number 1 was that it was made up of, even though these are both non-age stated, okay, but Elijah stated that release number 1, the 5 non-peated casks were approximately 9 years of age, and the lightly peated cask was about 8 years of age. Okay, so 8 to 9 year age stated for release number 1. Recently, on the Single Cask Nation podcast for Take 2, Wolf Island Take 2, Joshua stated that this release was 7 to 9 years old, okay, which slightly contradicts what Elijah said, because Take 2 was bottled in the winter of 2022. So Take 2 was bottled more than a year after Take 1. So in theory, or even in practicality, you would assume that Take 2 is a year older than Take 1. So I'm not trying to cause any animosity or he said, she shit. He said, she said. So I'm going to go with what Joshua said recently, in that it's 7 to 9 years. And I'm going to kind of assume that they're probably both 7 to 9 years old. So they're less than 10 years old, which rules out the island of Raasay, because Raasay, I believe, didn't start distilling until 2017. So there's no way that a 7 to 9 year old would come from there at that time. That doesn't make logistical sense. So I've eliminated that. All right. My understanding too that both of these are USA exclusive releases, and Single Cask Nation, I think I've said before, is an independent bottler. They retail for about $80, and you can still find Take 1, the first release. It's still out there in retail for about $80, although it's very hard to find. And Take 2, it was just recently released a few weeks ago, So you should be able to find it if you really search hard. So basically, they're both sister casks, all from the same distillery. And so what distillery makes peated and non-peated? Which, if you wait to the end, I'm going to tell you what my opinion is. All right. I think it's time to get into the review. I think I've been pretty thorough and covered most of everything. So again, we are going to be reviewing and tasting Single Cask Nation, Take 2, Wolf Island, non-age stated. All right, here's the review. Okay. When I first cracked this, I found it to be the nose was a bit reserved. It needed to open up a little bit. But even having said that, even once it's opened up, the nose isn't. If you put this in front of you at a foot away, the nose is not jumping out at you. You really have to do a deep dive to really start getting the notes. From my experience, there's little to no peat detected. However, if you deep dive into this with the nose, there's a slight hint of that Band-Aid medicinal note in there, but it's buried deep in there, and it's certainly not prominent. So even though this has 1/6 of a lightly peated, it's minimal, has a minimal effect on it, and from my perspective. All right, on the nose, here we go now. The official review for Take 2, Wolf Island. On the nose, apple juice, orchard fruits, root beer, cream soda, waxy crayons. There's a little bit of floral, perfume, a hint of vanilla. Also a slight dill note, which you would get from rye. There's that, but it's very slight, but it's there. And again, no real detectable peat unless you really dig deep. You might find a little bit of that medicinal peat, Band-Aid note, but it's really hard to pull out. Okay, on the palate. Barley sugar. It's viscous. Those orchard fruits are detectable. A little bit of that juicy fruit gum. It's viscous. It's got a nice mouthfeel. Peppery. Prickly. Oak spice. There's a light sweetness that leads to a dry astringency. A mouth puckering astringency. A little bit of honey, a little bit of vanilla. It's also a bit chalky. There's some spearmint and wintergreen in there, which I could even call an herbal note, but definitely spearmint, wintergreen, and also a little bit of herbaceous thing going on there. Also, a little bit of wet cardboard. We're going to do another taste for the finish. So there is sweetness in there, but it transitions to an astringency, a dryness, mouth puckering, medium finish, maybe a medium to medium plus, with that peppery oak spice that lingers. Score-wise, for my enjoyment, age and air do it justice. So be patient with it, and it will open up and really give you some nice results in here. For my enjoyment, I'm going to give it a respectable 85 to 86. And again, the reason why they call it Wolf Island is Water of Life Film. So that's where they got the acronym from. So that covers all the specs. That covers the review. If I was to speculate what distillery this came from, I'm probably going to guess it's either Arran or Tobermory. So Tobermory is from the island of Mull, and Arran is from the island of Arran. I have an old Arran 10 from 2017, which is loaded with the orchard fruits. And so this from First Fill ex-bourbon, I'm going to guess that it's Arran, but it also, in previous tastings with me, it reminds me of Tobermory. Okay, so if you like, and the new Tobermory 12, okay, has some sherry in it or some wine cask influence in it, which I'm going to be reviewing pretty soon, which I absolutely love. But my understanding is Tobermory 12, when it came out originally, I think in 2019, it was all ex-bourbon and some virgin oak with no sherry in it, which I've never tried that, which I wish I had. So taking the sherry note, integrated sherry note out of the Tobermory 12, this reminds me a little bit of that, or a lot of that, but it also reminds me of Arran. But if push came to shove, I would guess that it's Arran. But again, I don't have any inside information. That's just my opinion. But also, listening to Greg Swartz, the director of Water of Life Film, on a recent taste comparison, he wasn't talking out of school. He wasn't giving anything away, but he very candidly said it reminded him of Arran, but it wasn't a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, or anything like that. So Arran would be my first guess, and Tobermory would be my second guess. So if hopefully this review is helpful for you, if you can find these in the wild, for $80, I don't think you can go wrong. And I think it's interesting as hell. And even they put a lot of thought into this. And in my understanding, this sheet was actually photo lifted from a scene from the Water of Life film. And so the difference between 1 and 2, obviously, is one says take 2 and one doesn't. But also 2, where it says Single Cask Nation, on the first one, you see the label, it's blue and yellow. Blue's on the top, yellow's on the bottom. And on this one here, yellow's in the top and blue's on the bottom. So you can see the difference there as well. So it's great marketing, and this is I spent a lot of time investigating this, and I hope it was helpful, and I had a blast, really. And Single Cask Nation does great work, so go out and find anything by them, and I don't think you'd be disappointed. All right. Whew. Hats off to you all, and take care, folks. And remember, it's just whiskey. And listen to Kiss.